Nachi free.
Tomi Lahren was suspended from the Blaze by her boss Glenn Beck for going on The View and expressing that as a constitutionalist, she was actually pro-choice despite being a conservative. And that actually makes sense. If you're truly a limited government conservative, then you should not be arguing for more government when it comes to personal issues, especially between a woman and her fetus. And I know abortion is an extremely touchy subject that deserves its own video, so I don't want to get into the morality of the issue, whether it's murder or not, when life begins, etc. I'm pro-choice, I always have been. This video is about the need for more independent voices in the media. And by independent, I mean both politically independent voices that are not registered Democrats or Republicans or diehard liberals or conservatives, and financially independent voices that aren't tied to some massive corporation that's going to twist your arm, thus your opinion, and ultimately the laws that affect our lives. Actually, Scully, I feel I have the right to weigh in on this issue because I too have worked for Glenn Beck, and I worked for him as an independent freelance ghostwriter. I never saw my name in print in his magazine Fusion, but that was fine by me. Full disclosure, I've never met Glenn Beck. I never even spoke to the man, okay? But I will say in his defense that, considering everybody's now calling him a hypocrite, he was actually pretty generous in how much he was paying his freelance writers, at least me. And if perchance Glenn Beck is watching this video, I would like to tip my hat to you and give you a cloud nine of appreciation for having hired me as a writer back in 2007 and 2008, right around the time he was making the transition between CNN to Fox, as he became a household name among political news junkies like myself. Thank you, Mr. Beck, sincerely, for having given me the opportunity and for having boosted my confidence as a writer. It really changed my life. And yet, I didn't write for Glenn Beck for very long, and I suspect it was one of two reasons. The first reason was they probably figured out this guy's not a journalist. He's an okay writer, since they did give you a few assignments. And the first article I wrote for Glenn Beck, he actually read it on his radio show. And for me, that was an awesome experience. To hear a personality like him reading what I wrote word for word was pretty cool. But aside from the fact that the articles I delivered weren't all that journalistic and investigative, especially when his editor, who was a lovely person, told me, "Can you please make sure your references go a little deeper than just Google and Wikipedia?" Aside from that reason, I suspect the second reason why I stopped getting assignments was because the ideas I was pitching them were not exactly up Glenn Beck's alley. But that was the thing. Glenn Beck was presenting himself as an independent, a libertarian of sorts whose main concern was economic and fiscal conservatism and getting government out of our lives. So I thought, great, let's legalize marijuana. Let's legalize prostitution too. Oh man, if Glenn Beck wants a ghostwriter to make him look really independent and edgy, I'm the guy for that. But apparently Glenn Beck isn't as libertarian or independent as I was led to believe. And therein lies the problem and the need for truly independent voices to seek out the truth, especially when it comes to solving our problems with policies that have proven to work. For example, when it comes to legalizing marijuana and even prostitution, we've already learned this lesson the hard way from the prohibition of alcohol. It's not simply a moral issue or a matter of minding one's own business. It's a matter of logistics. Whenever government involves itself in legislating morality by policing private behavior, particularly between consenting adults in the privacy of their own homes or cheap motel rooms, you run into needless arrests and imprisonment of behaviors you're never going to control. To top that off, you inadvertently create illegal, underground criminal markets because enough people will take their chances in chasing whatever goods or services government is prohibiting in the first place. And what other problems does that create? More people needlessly arrested, imprisoned, and when they get out of prison, their lives are ruined. They turn to crime when they can't find work because of their arrest records, and this continues thanks to prison guard unions that advocate for keeping marijuana illegal and private prisons that benefit from more prisoners. Now, if you think I sound like a bleeding heart liberal, and therefore you assume that when it comes to healthcare, I'm going to advocate for universal/single payer, that's not at all what I think. And the reason why I'm against universal/single payer is because it would bankrupt our country, even more so than it already is, considering our $20 trillion national debt. Because I understand basic economics, and I know that everything has a cost, the solution to healthcare is to make sure people have some skin in the game. Now I'm starting to sound like a heartless conservative. But the inevitable reality is that people need to be incentivized to be more self-responsible with their own health and with their share of healthcare. And yet individually mandating that everyone purchase health insurance, such as the Affordable Care Act, is not the solution either, because it creates an artificial demand for a service that you must purchase. And because you must purchase it, there's no incentive for major corporations who already control the market to bring down the cost. I could go on and on with so many other examples, but the main point I'm trying to make is that we are being robbed of solutions to many issues because we're being fed these pre-packaged paradigms of what it is to be a true blue Democrat, or in the case of Tomi Lahren, what it means to be a constitutional conservative, or whatever other bullshit label people feel the need to live up to, instead of looking at an issue objectively and figuring out the most effective and efficient solution to it. And that's why you get major network fuck-ups by people like Rachel Maddow, the smartest person on TV, who didn't even remember to run the numbers on Trump's tax returns from 12 years ago because she felt the need to not only live up to her progressive anti-Trump image for all her leftist social justice warrior fan base, but to hypocritically chase after ratings for the major corporation who pays her millions of dollars a year. This is what happens when people buy into these categories and groupthink. And in the case of Tomi Lahren, working for Glenn Beck, there was a certain image she needed to keep up with, and certain issues she needed to agree with. After all, Glenn Beck also has a fan base to cater to and a business to sustain. Yet when I freelanced for him, I remembered thinking, who exactly is buying Glenn Beck's magazines and his radio subscriptions? Where is all the money coming from? Because I know how printing works, and these magazines are pretty expensive to produce. But apparently Glenn Beck was being bankrolled not just by his products and services, but by investors and right-wing think tanks who wanted to see a return on their money. There's a great article I stumbled into last year about Glenn Beck's company Mercury Radio and The Blaze, and how these companies started to run into serious financial trouble once Glenn Beck was no longer tied to Fox's apron strings. And the political gossip is that somewhere between Tomi Lahren getting too big for her britches over at The Blaze, as well as seeing the writing on the wall that Glenn Beck's company was in dire straits, she was going to have to look for work somewhere else sooner or later. Which is why it's no surprise that she's probably singing a different tune when it comes to feminist issues like abortion, just in case she wants to work at shows like The View, who were clearly not constitutionalists, let alone fiscal conservatives. By the way, I have to stipulate that this is all just my humblissimo opinion, okay, lest I get sued for slander or libel by an army of like corporate lawyers. And this is how political dialogue gets poisoned and even silenced on a national level when it comes to discussing and ultimately solving our problems like healthcare and the legalization of marijuana, let alone education, immigration, foreign policy, etc., etc., etc. And that's why truly independent voices on YouTube serve a purpose. We have nothing to lose and everything to gain to speak about the true solutions to our problems, because they're our problems too. Please don't let them shut us down, because that's what they're trying to do now. And I get it. YouTube is a private company, and other private companies have every right to pick and choose where their advertising dollars go. But the thing is that YouTube has become almost public property now. There are so many people making a living off YouTube, and YouTube would not have those billions of dollars in revenue if it weren't for the content creators. But more importantly, YouTube has become a battleground of ideas, and that's a good thing. The left versus the right, atheism versus religion, feminists versus men who go their own way, and other incredibly interesting debates that require freedom of speech. The problem is there are some people out there who aren't interested in debating ideas. They'd rather just silence them, like many social justice warriors who are not just on the wrong side of history, they're on the wrong side of logic. And that's not good for a free society. Good idea, Scully. In closing, I wish the best of luck to Tomi Lahren and Glenn Beck. And I don't mean to be divisive or hateful, but smug, condescending, PC policing, corporate ladder climbing cunts like Rachel Maddow and Trevor Noah can go fuck themselves. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, please subscribe by clicking on my face, and if you want to support this channel, click on the Patreon logo or donate via paypal.me/homegrown.